Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Well, thank you, Robin and Margaret, for inviting me to speak to you today. What I'd like to do is to tell you about my new book here called Feel Good, Change the World. Something's rather strange about this book, because actually I am an author. In fact, I've done lots of different things in my life, but this is my 13th book. I've got something like $3.8 million of sales. And my books are sold all over the world, and I've written books on technology, on business, on entrepreneurship. My work's been endorsed by lots of top leaders, 9 heads of UK top 1,000 companies, head of Apple, Sony, Carphone Warehouse, all these top people. This book is very, very different because I've often talked about I've written a book, but this book, in a way, it feels like I've not written it, that it's come through me. And it's one it's channeling. It's almost come from like some higher source, and I feel that this book has a very, very important message for humanity. And I feel like a baton has been passed to me, that I have a message that I need to take out into the world. And it's been somewhat of a surprise, because I'd never envisaged that I'd have a message that is important to humanity that I need to take out into the world. And part of it is there's a surprise on my part, and also an immense self-doubt, and also a fear, I suppose, about how I'm going to get this message out and how I can take this message to the world. So what I'd like to do is to sort of share a bit of it with you and where it's come from. I actually wrote this book, I think it's like the 4th time. And each time I wrote it, I've been on this balance between it coming from my head and the thinking side, and then this coming from, from the spirit. And I would not describe myself as a spiritual person, but what's happened is I cannot ignore that, spiritual element of humanity. So maybe I'm like the most unlikely person to write a book like this. But if I try and take you, just give you a quick nutshell of my background. When I was like a really little child, I used to like watching movies and watching TV. And what I used to imagine was that I could have like this really exciting, rewarding life that all these people in the movies had. And from very, very early on, I realised that this life was not going to be laid on for me. So I decided that I was going to become the author of my own life story, the director of my own life movie. If I cut short, I'm just coming out to 54 this year, but what that's resulted in is I've just had this really crazy life, and on one hand it's been like really ordinary, but on the other hand it's been like really extraordinary, but it's been full of like immense highs and also like immense lows. So just to give you a flavour of that, when I was 13 I decided I want to walk across Wales with my best friend. And my mum goes, well, how did I let you do that? And we walked like 120 miles and we were just completely on our own. I was got into skateboarding before it became a big thing, and I created a skateboard club, and we had like 1,700 members.
Amazing.
I joined the Royal Navy, and I used to like these James Bond films, and I saw myself as a bit of a James Bond type person, and he was a Royal Naval officer, and I thought that would be really cool, and Prince Charles and Prince Andrew in the Royal Navy. So, I went into the Royal Navy, did 3.5 years there, 10 years with the Mobil Corporation, and then I just thought, right, I want to have lots of money and lots of things. And if you like, I just felt that I was typical of humanity today, that we think that life is about us, and we think that life is about survival, but it's also about thriving, it's about getting on, it's about doing well. And when you translate that, it becomes into money, and you start to become, or see yourself in an ego way of, I am what I have, I am what other people think of me, I am what I do, and we sort of create all these constructs of what it's about. And if you like, I was headlong into that world, and so I saw myself as, I want to go and get stuff, I want to become a businessman, I want to become successful, I want to be a high achiever, and I was. I worked for the Mobil Corporation for 10 years, and I was like the star salesman, and I had a quick progression up. I then decided I was going to become an entrepreneur, so I floated my company.
Wow.
It was the biggest ever IPO that they've ever had on this baby market. In 9 months, I made £20 million for myself.
Amazing.
Which is just like amazing. For every penny the share price moved, I made or lost £250,000. I was chief exec of a publicly quoted company. And if you like, that was the dream. You know, you suddenly got like this immense wealth. You know, you've got the status that you're chief exec of a publicly quoted company, that you're master of the universe, that people look up to you. You know, in the way that we worship money in a way, we worship people like Richard Branson who've got all these things. And I thought that that was what life was all about. And in many ways, I just think that maybe my life was for a reason, and it was to learn what's really important in life. So as well as making all this money, I lost all this money. You know, my company, it went from me to 100 employees and back to me again. And that was like a horrible thing. You know, that the 1 minute you're like the hero and then you're zero. And then you have that impact that you have on other people's lives. So the things that you create, you can lift people up, but you can also pull them down. And that was something that, that I learned. But I must have had like at least 5 serious life-threatening, you know, situations or things where I could have died. You know, I was in a hurricane in the mid-Atlantic in the Royal Navy.
Wow. We
had steady 120-mile-an-hour winds. The bridge was 80 foot off the sea level. We were looking up at the waves. We wrote off both the helicopters, the power of the elements. We talked about the two-handed transatlantic race. We were up like where the Titanic went down, middle of the North Atlantic, these massive seas, just me and my best friend on the yacht, and slowly it started to fall to bits on us. And you know, thankfully, you know, I was sort of saved, and they had RAF Nimrods going into the to the ocean. But basically, what's happened with this book is that I suddenly see my consciousness has increased, and as that consciousness has increased, as I think a lot of ours does, you start to see things that you didn't see before. And what I feel is that what's happened, or what we need to do, is to see and to discover the truth. And also, when we see the truth, we need to make the connections between things. And then, when we see the truth and make the connections, we need to change the game. Because I feel that humanity is on a critical time. You know, the modern human beings, Homo sapiens, we've been around for about 50,000 years. In the last 3 decades, humanity, the world is so different than it's ever been. And I just think that you've got evolution, you know, where we've lived in balance with the natural world. But in the 3 generations, if I use the example of my family, my grandfather was born in 1865. The population of the world was 1.2 billion. When my father was born, it was 2 billion. When I was born, it's 3.4 billion. Now when my children's born, it's 7.4 billion and going up. And at the same time, so you've got this massive increase in population. You've got progress that seems like it's really good, that we've got science and engineering and technology and industrialization, and we can fly around, we can do all these things. But the impact of that is that it's having a catastrophic effect on the environment. We thought that we could go and do things and have things in the world, that the world was our playground. And I just see the world right now on a knife edge between great opportunities on one side, but also enormous threats on the other, economically, politically, socially, environmentally, and individually. And a lot of these issues are so serious that it threatens not just the future of humanity, but of all life on Earth. That what I didn't realise is that we're currently in the midst of the biggest mass extinction of species since the age of the dinosaurs, 65 million years ago. So every single day, we've got 150 to 200 species going extinct, gone forever. That's 1,000 times more than the rate of the natural rate of extinction. In the last 50 years, we've eaten 90% of the big fish in the oceans. We've killed 50% of the coral. You know, people talk about global warming, but it's almost like the tip of an iceberg. And what I feel is that if you look in all these different areas, we collectively of humanity have lost our way. And I just think that we're looking at our modus operandi of living is incompatible with the future of all life on Earth, let alone the future of all humanity. And what I feel is that we are in need of a massive, massive, massive change. Because for all the advancement, and we have to acknowledge the advancement, you know, there is less poverty in the world, we're living longer, you know, we've got a better, you know, we've got more wealth than we've ever had. But I think that we've got like a moral deficiency, and we've got an inner deficiency that's creating an epidemic of mental health at every age, at every level, in every society in the world. The biggest cause of death for men, 20 to 50 is suicide. Biggest cause of death, adolescent women, suicide. There's all sorts of atrocities going on in the world. And I feel that the way that we've organised ourselves, we're oblivious to a lot of the challenges. We trust that the politicians are going to lead us to to a better world, that they're addressing these issues. But I feel that we need a new enlightenment now in this world. And that enlightenment, I think, has got to be based on three tenets of wisdom, love, and imagination. Because I think it used to be, life was all about knowledge. Knowledge was like everything. Knowledge we worshipped. Knowledge was everything. But what we've got now is we've got a mass of knowledge. We've not got a deficit of knowledge. We've got so much knowledge, and it's not available to the few, it's available to the many. But the problem with that knowledge is that a lot of it is wrong or inaccurate. And what I sense is that there are things that, generally speaking, are thought of as good that are actually bad. Things that we think are bad actually turn out to be good. And when you start to look deeply at so many different issues, we have safety in numbers. We operate like a herd, you know, of humanity. Without realising it, we comply to the rules of society. And I just think that's got to change. And this, I think wisdom is what we need more than anything else. From the knowledge of all the things that we can do, we've got to do what's right. I think love, in terms of doing what is right, and imagination is, you know, Einstein said imagination was more important than knowledge, because knowledge is limited, but imagination is unlimited. And what I feel is that this next revolution needs to be a revolution perhaps at an individual level, and that when you start to pull apart all the pieces, you start to realise that the model for life, I think, rather than being this survive and thrive, where you just meet your basic needs and then you look to get on, we need to focus on happiness, fulfilment, and making a difference. And actually, all these things are connected. So it's not that we don't need money. It's not that money's a bad thing, but it's like the Dalai Lama says that if you take anyone in any religion, all we fundamentally want is we want happiness and the avoidance of pain and suffering. And so all the activities need to be focused on like the happiness. We just need like a change for everything, and I feel that that change needs to come in an individual level, and there's like an awakening. And so really, if you like to look at my book, and if you've got any ideas to help me about how I can articulate this message and get it out, I just feel that it's critical, it's absolutely critical that we change, because if we care about our children and we care about the future of humanity, I mean, it was David Hawking said, can mankind survive another 100 years? And some people go, well, ha, ha, ha. I mean, he's saying, I'm not saying they can't, but I just think that people have got no idea about how critical the state of humanity is, and how we need massive change, fundamental change from the bottom upwards. And we need to hold on to all that's good, and we need a more spiritual existence, and we need to live for the sake of others. And really, it's like what I've found is that my ideas maybe represent the ultimate truth, and they're aligned with the UPS values, because I think that there is ultimately one truth, and when you go searching for the truth, you come to the same place. And I think there's this point where religions and science, you know, collide. So I'm out of time, but thank you very much for